going for two. Then once we get it back again, if we have an opportunity to kick a field goal, that's 3. You win 26-25. Simple as that. Yeah. I mean, we were doing a pretty good job up to that point. Next guys that came in, we had some issues. I trust all my guys to go out there and play their best. We didn't play collectively our best throughout the whole game, giving up 2 scores on offense again, just like we did at the beginning of the season. Very frustrating, I can say that. Very frustrating. Well, he's still learning. Jalen's a baby, right? So when you play young guys, they sometimes they play young, right? Sometimes they might see something that's not really there. But he's going to keep getting better. He's a great individual. He's going to be a really good quarterback. I don't fault him at anything because I know when I was that young, I was doing a lot of stupid things on the field. So, young guys make young mistakes. That's just the way it goes. That's how you grow. You just don't want to be a repeat offender. You want to learn from those mistakes and put that in your memory bank from here on out.
Welcome to your 10th episode of the XFL Insider Podcast. Today you have your hosts Matthew and Drew. Drew, how you feeling today?
Could be better, could be worse. You know how it goes, brother.
Yep. Drew got held up by some of the great travel that we have at the airport. He was held up Monday, so he actually didn't make it home till Tuesday. He was covering the game, and he got an extra day in Houston.
Woohoo!
You can tell he's happy about it.
Really? I had to freaking take a day off of work just so I could travel back.
I understand, brother. I had to travel back Sunday as well and was wore out. Makes for a long week, but it's worth it. As we go forward today, we are going to discuss our last regular season week within the XFL. We've had a lot of different things go on and off the field, and we're going to discuss those today. Before we get started, just want to say it's been a pleasure. Me and Drew both. It's been a great season.
Absolutely. Yep.
We thank the XFL. We thank everybody that's listened. We were definitely tired, but it's definitely worth it. And I've seen more of Houston than I've seen in my whole life, but I've loved every minute of it. Oh, yeah. Drew, before we get started, you got anything you want to say?
Not really, man. I think I'll just kind of lead into what is on everybody's minds. This weekend. That's the loss of Chris Smith. Just a sad situation, man. No real details about it. Nobody's released any information. The XFL put out a statement. It said Chris was a powerful presence in the locker room, loved and admired by his teammates and the coaching staff, and shouted out T's and P's, thoughts and prayers. I mean, when you lose somebody that's a driving force behind your team, like to injury, even it really shakes your team and has effects. But when you lose somebody altogether, that's a rough situation. So not to lighten the blow, that I don't think that it can be lightened, but Seattle is going to be playing with some serious motivation and heavy hearts come this weekend. It's a sad thing. I hate that it happened.
It's very sad and very unfortunate. The cause of death is not known yet. He was 31 years old. Had just turned 31 a few months prior. Had a lot of life to live and was a good athlete in person. So it is very unfortunate and sad. And
I read, I want to say it was on Twitter, that he had lost, I can't remember if they were married, but he had lost his significant other that had just had their child last year. So just a tragic situation altogether.
Yeah, Chris was a great guy, great athlete. He had a lot of history within the NFL, as well as just being a person that people respected and wanted to be around and love. So rest in peace, Chris. I'm sure the Sea Dragons are going to come with some fury for him this next week. All right. Before we move on to the game summaries, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the TV numbers. I don't want to get in depth in this. This is starting to cause some differential dividing within the spring football community. Judging from groups online as well as people that have posted articles, you see people arguing about who's the best, XFL or USFL. We're not going to do that here. My suggestion for you, people at home, is to go check those numbers out. They're on our social media stuff as well as anybody who is a notable figure within the XFL. Check those out and gather your own opinions. From my opinions, the numbers are almost the same for USFL and XFL, which is a good thing for spring football. The little bit of competition is also good, but we need to be united for this all to work. So I just want to say that I am happy with those numbers, and I hope the people are at home as well. Drew, do you got anything you want to share on it?
Yeah, I'm not 100% in line with you as far as like unity with the XFL and USFL. I think both sides have made it pretty clear that they don't want anything to do with the other one, and they're trying to succeed in their own rights. So, I do think that the arguing and the competition between the two leagues really is a good thing overall. I don't think viewership really has any impact on that. Everybody loves football. It seems like there's a lot of people that want spring football around. Otherwise, it wouldn't have stuck. So I think looking forward, prospects are good really for both leagues as it stands right now. I think, there's some things both leagues can do better, but as it stands right now, I think it is a good thing that both leagues are around and both leagues are competing.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I agree with that. And like I said, when I say the divide, I mean with fans. Of course, I understand we're going to have a division within the actual entities, but fan-wise, it gets a little toxic sometimes. So
it does, but you know how the internet is. Everybody wants to be right. Nobody suffers any consequences.
Yep. Yeah, I almost don't want to post any more TV numbers.
Yeah, no. That's when I saw that in the show notes, I was like, oh my gosh, we're doing this again.
All right, moving forward. Let's talk about some games. We had some good games last week. Almost every game last week came down to the wire. What do you think? I mean, it was a good week of football.
I mean, the XFL probably couldn't have wished for any better football for a week that a competitor league is coming into the fold. USFL was last week. That was their first week for this season, and XFL really put on a good product across all the games. There weren't any games that were truly snoozers. There was good football, huge plays in each game. I mean, really, really good watches all across the slate.
Let's talk about the Vegas Vipers taking on the Houston Roughnecks in Houston. The Vipers lost 21-28, but it was a hell of a game for Vegas. They did really well, and thankful for our Houston defense that they came ready to play.
Grief, no kidding.
I'll just let you go ahead and take it from there, my friend.
It was rough, man. I mean, so if anybody watched the post-game presser for Houston, where Silvers, strolled in casually late and stole the questioning show, so to speak, he was overly complimentary of the defense too, as far as getting them back in it, and that the defense was really the foundation that the offense leaned on to get going. So, two absolutely outstanding effort plays. So Tavante Beckett with a scoop and score down in Vegas's end, and then was it back-to-back drives or was it a couple of drives in between? I can't remember, but Ajane Harris had just a freak play where he stood up Martavis Bryant and started to drive him backwards and then just swiped at the ball instinctively, and the ball popped out right into his hands as he was standing up, and Martavis Bryant didn't even try to tackle him. He just, I don't know what the deal was there, but he probably was surprised, honestly, because I think Ajane Harris was pretty surprised that he had the ball. So, two defensive scores to get Houston back into it. Houston was down at the half again, and to this point, I don't think they had won a game that they were down at the half in. The offense really locked down, leaned on the run game. Max Borghi had a hell of an effort
yes, sir.
running. less than 100 yards, but he had close to 150 all-purpose with some big returns. And then Bryson Aline finally punching the ball in for the first time this season. He's been so close. He had 2 chances in Seattle. He had a couple chances elsewhere where he had big runs to get down in scoring position. Then he just got subbed out, and either Borgie or Dejon Lee punched it in for him. But he finally got his just desserts and definitely ate it up. I mean, it was a direct snap to him, and he took it off the left side after starting in the middle. He did a little bit of a jump cut and then turned and ran, found some open space, and just dive bombed from about 3 yards out, landed about 3 yards in the end zone. Did a little bit of a flip, and then definitely got up and did a backflip and went and jumped in the fans section. Man, it was cool seeing him score. He had a blast out there after that.
Yeah, that was an epic moment. I'd walked down just when that started. I got on the field and got to witness that flip, and I loved it. Yeah, it was a good moment. I didn't even have my camera ready or anything, but man, great to see.
He's such a good dude. Like he's super humble, super thankful to people, just a really gracious guy, and a hell of an athlete. Super fun to watch. He's just explosive. I think anybody that's watched the Roughnecks play this year have said, "Who the hell is that?" when he gets the ball. Just because he makes plays, he's just got something about him. So really cool to see him punch it in. I think there was something interesting I thought come out of Houston's post-game press conference, and that was Brandon Silver saying he hasn't practiced for several weeks, and that's been since his arm injury, his throwing arm injury. You know, this could be some hopium here, but if he's not been practicing, then he may just have been rusty the past few weeks. And if he gets a full week of practice in this week, then who knows? Maybe he comes in and he's, the first 3 weeks Brandon Silver's, not the last 6. So, we could see he's had some inaccuracies and things like that over the last several games, but he's also had some really damn good throws. And, one of the 2 interceptions that he threw this weekend was just a miscommunication between him and Deontay Burnett on a route. The other one was a bad underthrow, but it was a deep ball. It ended up really not amounting to too terribly much in terms of the broad scope of the game. So, overall, Silvers did a little bit better this week. Numbers don't necessarily reflect it in terms of yardage, but I think he looked better this week than he did the past several weeks. So hopefully there's some upside coming.
Yeah, I could feel from his presence during the press conference, he had a little bit more swag and confidence to him also. Right. So I think we're good there. This upcoming week, it'll be curious to see if Houston plays their starters or if we're going to sit some people.
That'll be pretty interesting. I think you play your starters because Houston's not in a position to say, "Oh, we've got everything together. Let's just take a week off." I think
Agreed.
Houston's really got some things to figure out before they get into that playoff matchup even. And this is a good warm up for that playoff game, especially if we end up playing Arlington again. But even if we have to play San Antonio, using Arlington in a must-win situation for them, or what essentially amounts to a must-win situation for them, using them as a tune-up to figure some things out and really try and take the cog out of the wheel for the offense. I think we need to use that opportunity if we can.
No doubt. I want to talk about Jalen McClendon for a second. I thought he did pretty good.
Man,
he looks like an athlete, a stud. I bet they wish they had him at the beginning of the season as well.
No kidding. Honestly, they'd be in a much better place standings-wise. I still don't think they'd be in the playoffs, but good grief, they'd be a much better team. And I mean, who knows? They could compete for the playoffs. So that was what Rod Smith said that I've kind of said all season long during the press conference after the game this week was he's thought that they were the most talented team in the league, like hands down in terms of just looking at it on paper. I mean, you've got the guys like Geronimo Allison, Martavis Bryant, on the defense. What's the name of the defensive lineman that played for the Falcons? It'll come back to me. Anyways, on both sides of the ball, they've had big names and they've had them healthy all year. So it's been crazy seeing how they just can't really put together a full product. Now, they did lose Demby, the offensive tackle, during the first half, and after that, that's kind of when the wheels fell off for their offense. Before then, Houston couldn't stop them. But when Demby went out, they couldn't protect McClendon, and Houston's defensive line, I think, started staying at home a little bit more and didn't allow him to get out of the pocket. And that ended up, causing a few sacks, causing a turnover that resulted in a touchdown, that scoop and score by Tavante Beckett. I think it was DeAndre Johnson that smacked the ball loose. Once Demby went out, man, it was tough sledding for Vegas. But McClendon, just to end on point here, McClendon is going to be a problem moving forward. He's going to be a problem because that dude is really good. If they get offensive line protection, it's not going to be a 1-2 win Vegas team next season. They're going to be competitors.
No doubt. He's legitimate in everything he does. So be curious to see what happens with him in the offseason also, if he stays around even.
Yeah, I think he will. I don't think he's put together enough polished highlights to say that he deserves an NFL chance as of yet, but I don't think it's necessarily far away. If he puts together a good season next year, he may be gone.
Well, okay. That was a good game. I was there. Drew was there. We loved it. We love you, Houston. Keep up the good work, man.
Yeah, a lot of craziness in the press box, too, so it's actually pretty fun.
Next up, let's discuss the Orlando Guardians. They lost a close fight to the San Antonio Brahmas, 23-25. That game was in San Antonio. I didn't expect this one to be such a good one. San Antonio had a pretty good offensive stance throughout the game. Cohen looks good. Everybody looks good. I was impressed by this team. We went from the team of field goals to the team of playing football. So,
Yep.
What do you think, Drew?
Well, I think the same. I think San Antonio definitely knew that they had some things that they had to fix going into that game, and they knew it was must win. Every game for about the last week or two has been must win for San Antonio. They really came with a whole different invigorated spirit than we normally see from them. Now, is that because they were playing Orlando? Is Orlando still that bad? I don't think anybody really knows the answer to that question. Quentin Flowers came in and played after Dormady got benched for Orlando. In terms of standings, it was a little bit of a slap fight, but it was an entertaining slap fight. Orlando with the Blandino, the Mac Brown fake punt pass.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Make me scream
touchdown.
out loud. I was out eating. I screamed out loud.
Yep. Absolute dime that Mac Brown dropped, and then a hell of a catch, too, on the other end. And San Antonio just never said die. They plugged away. They pushed. They were consistent on offense. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean they were super productive, but they were consistent enough to push through and ended up with the dub against Orlando.
Want to note Mr. Nick Holly. He had 4 catches for 105 yards.
So,
He was utilized.
absolute spark plug for that offense. I knew he wasn't going to be out of the league for long. I'm so glad he got picked up.
Oh, me as well. And me and him, we talk a little bit on Instagram, and I'm trying to get him in for an interview, but he is so fired up about the season, he's not taking any time off, and I understand that. So much respect to you, Nick.
Yeah, no, that
Keep up
man's
the hustle, brother.
Hard worker, absolute spark plug for any team that he's on.
We love to see that. That was a story when I saw it. Let's see. Let's see. I'm trying to see what Cohen's stats are. Do you have his stats in front of you by chance?
Do not have his stats. Let me see if I can't pull them up real quick.
Let's see what he did this game individually. I've got his season stats, but just this game I want to.
Who was it you were looking up?
Cohen. I keep saying it wrong. Sorry.
No, he was 25 for 31, 302 yards passing, and 1 touchdown. Almost 10 yards per pass, so averaging pretty much a first down every time he threw the ball. So, Cohen definitely put together a great performance, and honestly, they had almost 100 yards rushing too. It was a complete performance from the standpoint of the style of offense that San Antonio likes to run. So,
Yep. Patrick looked good running the ball. He looked really good.
Yeah, Patrick had 130 total yards and a touchdown.
Nice.
It seems like they've figured out a little bit of a recipe for success there. I mean, Nick Hawley comes in. Maybe teams don't have any film on how San Antonio wants to use him, so they're dangerous that way. And then Jock Patrick is becoming a force out of the backfield in the passing game as well. This past week, maybe that's something that they can use to help them against DC. Who knows?
And they're going to need the help. So
yeah,
with the with the coordination and the fire they played with last week, I don't think it's out of scope that they can pull a win off this next week.
Oh, and what about Beasley's pick six, man?
Oh yeah, beautiful.
Basically standing on the line of scrimmage and just bats it out of the air, and it miraculously just falls to him.
We had a few slaps this week. A few slaps. Yeah. Oh man, yeah, good games. Speaking of Beasley, we'll talk about him some more later. Do we got anything else we want to share about these two teams, specifically this game, before we go forward?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it was just another good game. It was entertaining to watch.
No doubt. And like I said last week or the week prior, it's funny how these teams that we talked mess about originally, are putting out these products that we want to watch now, and that we are enjoying, more than those winning teams. So
when you have so much talent on each roster league wide, it's a matter of time until everybody puts it together. You've got brand new coaches who have never coached before. You've got guys who have only been ever associated with the NFL or coached in the NFL or played in the NFL. I mean, there's a lot of unknowns coming into the season, but when you pair unknowns with talent, usually you end up getting some good unexpected results. And sometimes you have to wait a little while for them. Other times it happens at first and flames out. So there's any number of storylines for this year for the XFL, but finally putting out really good content or really good football is a huge deal for the league.
Yes, sir. All right, let's talk about the Arlington Renegades. They lost 26-28 to the Defenders in DC. That game was sold out, by the way, 18,000-ish strong. That was also a good game and was not expected, in my opinion, and took it down to the wire. When I turned that game on, I was sure that the Renegades were down, I think, by 3 scores, maybe more. And then I got off and I got back on and they had caught back up. And this is the excitement of the XFL. Yep. This is what it does. It when a team's out, they have the opportunity to come back like that. So great job, XFL. Drew, what do you got? Some details about this game.
Well, I mean, so you touched on the 18,000 person sellout. Really, I mean, it looked great on TV. Almost $1 per person towards the beer snake. The beer snake was $17,000 ish.
Nice.
Plus a little bit more. I think that was figured out by ESPN's Stormy Bonantoni.
This game did go to overtime. I forgot to mention that.
Definitely. It went to overtime. It showed off the excellent overtime format that the XFL has. There's high drama. Luis Perez came alive in the second half. The defense for the Renegades came alive. It seemed like DC couldn't get anything going, and DC just had a little bit more in the 2-point conversion department. I mean, honestly, it was almost a tale of two halves. I mean, you can't even say a tale of two halves. It was really the fourth quarter for Arlington that they stepped up their level of play. And there was a couple of things that happened that Bob Stoops, was rather upset about, or maybe could have challenged, but I think he called a solid game overall in terms of, from the head coach standpoint, and kept his team in it. And there was a cool moment on the sideline where he, first started chewing out one of his players and then turned it into a learning experience for him. And even one where he got on to the receiver because the receiver changed his route kind of mid-route, and it hung Luis Perez out to dry for a pick six. And I mean, Bob Stoops put on a coaching masterclass just to get back into that game. So, a little bit unfortunate for Arlington rather that they didn't win, but I mean, they definitely showed that they do belong, with the better teams in this league. I think the addition of Luis Perez is a huge deal for their offense, and they're going to be a threat for Houston next week, big time.
Yes, and with that loss, they need to beat Houston next week, correct? Or hope the Brahmas lose.
Yeah, if Arlington wins, then they're in. But if they lose and Arlington and San Antonio wins, then they've got problems.
Yeah, that I will note the Arlington defense is impressive as always, and that once again is the reason they keep in the game. And that's a lot of these teams, and my team included, Houston. Thank God for defense, as it's going to win championships, no doubt.
And there has been like a lot of scoring defense in this league this year. There's been a lot, and it's not even bad play on the offense usually that does it. It's just been huge, big boy plays by the defenses.
Yep. Whether it's been a pick or a batted down ball or a forced fumble, that all those things are that takes skill. That's not just luck.
Yep. And there's been a lot of defensive touchdowns too. I mean, it's been crazy.
Yeah, no doubt. So we hope to see the Renegades come out and play next week, and I'm sure they will because their season's on the line. Like you said, Luis Perez looked pretty good. I mean, big step up from what they were doing prior. So good job, Arlington, stepping your stuff up, making that fan base proud.
Yep. Kindly trip up next week, though.
Now, they'll be playing our defense next week, so it'll be a little different for them. Before we move on, anything else, Drew?
Nope. I think we pretty much touched on everything in that one. Pretty straightforward game, pretty straightforward performance, pretty straightforward result, with the exception that nobody really expected Arlington to put on a fourth quarter show like they did.
Okay, let's move on to the Seattle Sea Dragons beating the St. Louis Battlehawks 30-12 in St. Louis, specifically the Battledome.
Yes, sir.
I think there was 33,000 give or take at that game there, and they were rowdy there until the end. Started losing, and wasn't so rowdy anymore.
Yeah, turns out when you can't tackle and your defense can't stop what's coming, your attendance drains out mid game.
The St. Louis franchise loves their team, but they got to win.
Yep.
And it's clear and obvious.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you've got that many people that are out, everybody sees the writing on the wall, and they're like, all right, well, 35,000 people, we're starting to border on significant traffic now, so let's get out of here. Like, it makes sense that a lot of them started leaving somewhat early. It wasn't anything extreme. They were still in the game technically. Seattle was just way too much for them. I mean, Ja'Cour Pearson, my goodness, that guy's a nut. Like, he is crazy good. Great open field play, great vision. That long touchdown reception that he had from DiNucci, where he broke like 4 tackles and zigzagged in the middle of the field, and just an absolute thing of beauty.
Yeah, he's an athlete, no doubt. So, I mean, I want to note on Ben DiNucci, I mean, he looked good. 20 for 30 with 242 yards, and he ran for 38 yards on 7 attempts.
Yeah, and he threw a non-consequential interception, too. Like, it was the first time that he threw an interception, and it wasn't like, oh, well, that was mandatory. Like, I mean, I still made the joke, but it didn't end up affecting the game any. It didn't make the game any closer.
Yeah, I
like
understand. And I want to note, I think Pearson, to me, he looks almost like a Jamar Chase. I mean, it's very similar in my mind, and watching him play.
I think he reminds me a little bit more of like what Golden Tate was in college.
Understood.
Just like, if the ball's around him, he's going to catch it. But if there is any space whatsoever, you can bet that he's about to exploit it and turn it into the absolute most that can happen, for yards after the catch. Just absolutely stunning wide receiver display from him on Sunday.
Now, A.J. McCarron had a rough game this time, and this was probably his first rough game of the season. He threw for 186 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions. It wasn't too good for his normal span of play. Do you think he's going to step it up next week coming in?
I think that depends. I think they're kind of squatting on his injury a little bit. If you remember, I think it was 2 weeks ago he sat out and the backup had played against Vegas. And the backup didn't do too bad, but McCarron didn't look like himself. And I think they're sitting on his injury a little bit, and he's trying to gut it out. Ultimately, an injured McCarron is better than what their backup is. Although he didn't, like I said, he didn't play bad. But if McCarron is hobbled or injured and it's affecting his play, then St. Louis has a tall order this week again. So in Orlando, because Orlando, they still scored points against San Antonio's defense, and San Antonio's defense is up there in terms of performances. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens between St. Louis and Orlando this weekend, just based on the fact that McCarron may not be 100%.
Yeah, his former backup Teano, correct, Nick?
I believe so.
He hurt his foot, so he's actually out for the season now. Do you know who their backup currently is? I'm trying to find it right now.
Grief. No, I didn't even realize that.
Yeah. I know Manny Wilkins, they've dropped him, I believe, a while back, so he's not there anymore.
So let's see here. Battle Squawks. Let's look at the roster. Of course, it's not in order. So they've got AJ McCarron, Wilkins.
So they still got Manny Wilkins?
They've still got Manny Wilkins, but the reason we had a little bit of dead time there is because V. Testaverde, there's no photo on here. I don't know if Vinny Testaverde has a son. I've never heard of him. Vinny Testaverde's got to be like 60 years old by now, so there's no way I just saw that and my first thought was Vinny. I was like, what? No. But yeah, there's somebody by the last name of Testaverde with first initial V at quarterback on the Battlehawks roster. So who knows? But yeah, Manny Wilkins is still there. So
10-4. So they do have a backup. We just don't know much about them.
Right.
Oh, Battlehawks. I hope for this franchise that they have it figured out, because it makes me sad to see them ride so strong and then fall off on the end.
No comment.
Yep. Now we're going to talk more about their playoff implications here in a little bit. But specifically on that game, what is it? I'm trying to find some more good stats.
Well, so honestly, DiNucci really, played his ass off this game. It was, I don't want to go as far as saying it was a masterclass, but like it was about as close as you're going to see it to a masterclass. It was
definitely an XFL masterclass, no doubt.
For sure. Finding all the different receivers that he found, the total yards that he put up, the touchdowns that they scored, and he was making really good, smart throws underneath too. It wasn't like he wasn't just bombing the ball downfield and oh well, crap, I threw an interception. Hope they don't score, guys. Like it was a complete performance for them on offense and really on defense too, because St. Louis has been a good scoring offense the entire season, and it's not an easy offense to stop. So they really put together a complete performance. They being Seattle.
Yes, I understand. Yeah, I want to note the play. I think it was like a 7 or 8 yard play where he ran up the middle and just trucked his way into the end zone.
Oh, and so all right, this is where I say some things that are not wholesome. I cannot stand Ben DiNucci. I can't. I just, you know what? Who knows? I may meet him one day and he might be the nicest guy to your face. But when you knock somebody out literally and then you stand over them, and then for 3 minutes afterwards you're flexing and telling the crowd to be quiet, like, all right, guy, we get it. You did something cool. Shut up. Like, play your position. Quit bragging that you knocked somebody completely out. Like, hopefully that dude's gonna be all right. You don't have to shine your ass in front of 38,000 people in person and then countless hundreds of thousands at home. Like that, to me, that makes you a grade A douchebag, regardless of who you are.
I feel that. And my argument here is if he wasn't playing like a XFL all-star and he was acting this way, I wouldn't like him a lot more. But, he's talking the talk and walking the walk right now. I don't think
the only reason that he's really walking the walk though is because his defense failed him out multiple times.
True
Like,
that. I mean, you can hear how
so
he talks.
let's be real here. He's got double-digit interceptions.
You can hear how he talks to his coach just within the huddle. June, what are we running next? June, what the hell? June. I mean, I'm following you, bro. I agree with you, but you can't lie and say he's not backing it up some. I mean, he's playing.
No, he's playing good, but if he had, I don't know, man. I don't believe in doing that stuff overall. Like when somebody's hurt, you don't. Yeah, that's just, it's some unwritten stuff you don't do, and if you do it, you're an asshole, right? Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Like, you're an asshole. That's just what it boils down to. And it honestly, would I be a little bit more upset if he was the best player in the league doing it? No, because I look at it the same way. Whether you're a crap player and you make a good play, or whether you're the best player in the league and you make a good play, you don't stand over somebody that's hurt, and you damn sure don't brag about it for minutes afterwards. But it's just, it ain't right.
I understand. I'm not disagreeing. We just don't know the full situation either. What if that guy was just talking crap to him the whole time? He finally had his opportunity to knock his tail out. I mean,
oh, right, but I mean,
it is what it is.
In that case, he learned his lesson. He got what was coming to him. Shut the hell up and get back in the huddle. Like, know what I mean?
That's a big quarterback there.
No, for sure. No, that's what I'm saying. Like, if the dude that was knocked out was talking trash the play before, so what? You don't flex over somebody that's knocked out. He can't freaking see you doing that shit anyway. So why? Sorry,
You're fine. Go ahead.
We need to go on. Bottom line, I can't stand Danucci. I cannot. I can't even with that guy.
All right. So that is our game summaries for week 9. Oh, what a week it was. What a week. All right, next up, let's discuss the Orlando Guardians versus the St. Louis Battlehawks. That game is Saturday, April 22nd at 12 p.m. Eastern, and it is on ESPN as well as ESPN Plus. All games are streamed from ESPN Plus, regardless of their main channel. So, as we get started in this, what do we think here? I mean, generally, looking at this, I would think St. Louis is going to steamroll the Guardians. But as we've seen the past few weeks, we've kind of got some upsets going with the Guardians and other teams. So do you feel this could be an upset for the St. Louis Battlehawks?
I do. I think it's got a little bit of it written, maybe written in the stars. I don't want to say written in the stars because we are dealing with Orlando here. But, I think the thing with A.J. McCarron being injured, that's a huge deal. If he is not at 100%, then there's every possibility that Orlando can come in and score some points in the fourth quarter after having that defense on the field for a while and really make it interesting or win outright. So, do I see Orlando winning for sure? No, absolutely not. But do I see a competitive game? 100%. I think it's going to be a competitive game. I think it's going to be a nail biter. And that doesn't bode well for St. Louis because St. Louis has to make up points to stay in the playoff race.
Yeah, and a lot of St. Louis, their success is going to come if their quarterback's playing or not, or if he's hurt or not. This team is really going to rest on McCarron's shoulders at this point in terms of offense. So it's tough for them because even if they do make the playoffs, if they wind up with a hurt McCarron, how much further can you go?
Right. And, St. Louis is favored by 9. It's in the Battlehawks. They're favored by 9. So, they have everything seemingly in their favor. But if McCarron's, like we're saying, if McCarron's not going to be at 100%, then that opens the door for Orlando to pull off some shenanigans. I would imagine Quentin Flowers is going to start. Quentin Flowers looked really good in his snaps against San Antonio's defense. He was moving the ball. I mean, this isn't really cut and dry for St. Louis.
Do we have anyone else to look out for on either team in terms of skill players? I know we had Brian Hill for St. Louis. He's had some pretty key fumbles, stuff like that you could note.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see if Lattimore plays. Lattimore's an X factor for Orlando, but I don't know if he got shut down for the season because he's just too talented. Nobody wants to hurt him. They want to have him back next year, or what the case is. But especially if Lattimore plays, then San Antonio might have problems. But I think really Quentin Flowers is going to be the X factor for Orlando. And St. Louis, St. Louis, even with the hurt McCarron, you still have to look out for Butler. You still have to look out for Hill. I mean, they've got some dogs on that offense. So I think this is going to be a lot closer than what Vegas thinks.
Yeah, no doubt. At this point, Orlando doesn't have anything to lose, so expect them to go for it and go hard. And that includes fake punts, 4th and 15s, whatever that takes to get the win, they're going to do it. They have nothing to lose, but everything to gain from this win.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're playing against a top 3 team in the league on the road at their place to end your season, which hasn't gone the way that you wanted it to. So what better way to end a season than with a win in those circumstances to build on into the next season? Like if they win against St. Louis, they know they can play with anybody. So what's that do for their next season? It just helps them start a little bit higher. The line or the spread is -9 for St. Louis, and the over/under is 47.5. How do you feel about that? Because I don't think St. Louis covers.
I think they cover there on that.
Really? You think they win by 9 or more?
Yeah, I think it'll be a good
9?
game as long as McCarron's playing. Now, if McCarron's not playing, that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But I think at this point that this is my opinion, is it's almost embarrassing if you're a St. Louis and you're going to have it come down to the wire against the worst team in the league, Orlando. And that's just my belief, especially going into the playoffs. This may be St. Louis's last game as well, regardless of what they do.
Right.
So I think they're going to show out if the opportunity arises, just because you don't have another choice.
Yeah.
I think the over is there as well. I wouldn't take the under on that.
Yeah. See, I don't know, because if McCarron's not 100%, then they may not score a whole lot.
Agreed.
And with Orlando playing musical quarterbacks, they're probably not likely to score a whole lot either. I don't know that I would touch the over/under, but if I did, I would probably lean under until I knew that McCarron was 100%.
Understood.
Now, when we're talking playoffs for St. Louis is, so according to the XFL, they've got differential as one of their stats, and the differential is what it would go to if both Seattle and St. Louis win next week. So the differential for Seattle is 47 points in the positive, and the differential for the Battlehawks is 22 points in the positive. Now, they both would have the exact same division record, which would be, so the order of your tiebreakers goes overall record, division record, and then you get into differential. So differential between the two teams right now is 25 points in favor of the Sea Dragons. So if both teams win, that means that the differential in points, the Battlehawks would have to make up 25 points to go into the playoffs.
Looks like Jake just joined us. Jake, you got anything you want to add on the playoff picture for the Battlehawks or the Seattle Sea Dragons?
I played the fifth.
Understood. Now, guys at home, if you're listening, if you want to check out some more stuff on the scenarios, there's a lot of stuff posted on social media. I've posted stuff on my accounts, the XFL Insider Podcast. Check it out. If not, check out guys like Mike Mitchell. They're very informative and give you the information you're looking for. And who knows, if you got a question, send them a message. They may answer. Most of these guys are really cool and down to earth. As Drew said, this is going to come down to a tie, and that tie is differential. It depends on if whoever wins. I mean, we got a lot of different things going here. So if St. Louis wins and Seattle loses, St. Louis is in the playoffs, correct?
That would be correct, because that would be correct. Their overall record would be better.
Okay, so there's one scenario. 2, If St. Louis loses and Seattle wins, Seattle's in the playoffs.
That is correct.
3, St. Louis loses, Seattle loses, St. Louis is in the playoffs as of a fourth loss in a non-divisional match. Is that correct?
That would be correct. They would have the better divisional record than Seattle would have at that point.
Okay. So, and then like you said, we're down to the fourth, which is what you just discussed. And I don't even need to hit that because you discussed it and it makes sense.
It's points for minus points against.
So both of those scenarios are going to affect the Sea Dragons as well as the Battlehawks.
Yep.
It sounds a lot more confusing than what it is. When you actually sit down and just read it and look at the numbers, it makes sense. So people at home, check it out. I mean, it's really
the
easy.
fact that it's coming down to this is good for the XFL big time. I mean, there's a playoff race still alive in week 10 for both sides, and it's a 18 league. Like you can't really ask for much more.
No, sir, you can't. All right. Before we move on, Drew, did you have anything else you wanted to cover on this before I ask Jake if he does?
Nope.
Jake, what you got? Anything? We just discussed the Battlehawks last game, week 9 game. Do you have anything you wanted to talk about for that game?
Again, I played the fifth.
Okay. Moving forward, let's talk about the DC Defenders taking on the San Antonio Brahmas. That game is in the Alamodome in San Antonio. It is taking place on Saturday, April 22nd at 3 p.m. Eastern, and it is on ABC. Like I said earlier, all games are also on ESPN+. Now, the Brahmas have some work to do here if they wish to keep their season hopes alive, and that is to take on the DC Defenders. The DC Defenders aren't untouchable like we thought. We thought a few weeks ago that nobody would take them down until the losing Orlando Guardians knocked them off their pedestal.
Yep.
What do you guys think about this game? Any excitement? Any names to watch? And what can we expect?
Well, I think for San Antonio, you go back to Patrick out of the backfield. You talk about Nick Hawley. Jack Cohn came around, had a really good performance. The offense really showed some strides. Nobody doubts their defense is really good. I mean, they've got one of the better scoring defenses in the league. So it's an outside shot maybe, but I don't think that they're as far off from DC as anybody may think. I mean, you look at what Arlington did against DC this weekend in DC, and you realize, hey, like you said, they're not untouchable. So, do I think it'll happen? No. Is it possible? Absolutely. And if the Brahmas win, then that puts pressure on the Renegades to win, because the Brahmas actually lead in differential over the Renegades by 19 points. So, I mean, theoretically, if Houston came out and, say beat Arlington 31-0 and the Brahmas won by 1 point, then they would be in. And I don't think that that's going to happen to Arlington, but I mean, the Brahmas definitely need an Arlington loss. But that was just to put out there how they could end up with pretty much, or how they could end up with the same record, but the Brahmas would go through.
Yeah, this is one of those times where if they win, Arlington has to win or they're gone. So this would be a good little competition for the weekend to see what's happening.
Absolutely. Everybody's so focused on the Battlehawks and Sea Dragons race, I think they turn their heads from the Renegades and the Brahmas, which, I mean, both of them have a losing record right now. So, rightfully so, I would imagine. But, I mean, it is still a playoff race. So.
Yes, and the Brahmas have shown that they have an offense, finally. It took 9 weeks, but here we are. And we actually played a game without kicking 1 million field goals. So, worked out well. And I'm happy for them and their fan base, as well as their coaches. They deserve to know that they are a legitimate football team, regardless of win or loss record.
Right.
Now, like I said, it should be a good weekend. I'm excited. I think this to me is one of my favorite games for some reason this week. I don't really know why. I couldn't tell you, but I feel like seeing DC get beat up a little bit will be good for my soul. So,
well, I mean, You look at it, there's a lot of intrigue around this game. I mean, DC's really the only team in position to rest their starters. I mean, Houston could, but Houston also has a playoff game against potentially the same exact team next week, or against a very similar team who has had a resurgent offense. So there's more, I guess, initiative for Houston to play their starters than there is for DC. If DC rests their starters, I mean, I could definitely see San Antonio winning. That, it's not out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah, most of my thought is in terms of this portion of the league, Houston's good, but we're not amazing. So all these teams have a chance to actually win this championship or get there. And so I'll be ready for that playoff game when we finally have it.
Oh, for sure.
Jake, you got anything you want to add before we move on?
Well, let's just say my little take is going to be a little bit saucy. It's kind of a Stephen A. Smith meets Woody Page scenario. Outside of the playoff implications and the fact that it's on ABC, that's all they really have going for it right now. I really don't expect this game to be very exciting at all. I mean, considering you already got one team that's already a lock in the playoffs and one that could or could not. It just depends on who will actually end up being the least sucky team out of Texas this weekend. That's the only thing I can take out of this. I mean, the only thing it really has going for it is the implications for getting in the playoffs, potentially for San Antonio. But I mean, unfortunately, I'm more than likely seeing almost a blowout scenario where, yeah, the Brahmas will get some offense in, but DC may be too much for them to handle. I mean, like I said, just playoff implications and the fact that it's on ABC, which I will likely be watching. But outside of that, I mean, not much out of it's going to thrill me any, especially in the sports betting department where it's like, no thank you, hard pass.
Yeah, and speaking of sports betting, I mean, it's the Defenders are 3-point favorites. The game, if I'm not mistaken, is in San Antonio, it looks like. No, it's not. No, is it?
Yeah, it should be.
It is in San Antonio. So 3-point favorites for the Defenders, over under a 42 flat. So, I mean, I wouldn't touch this game either just because I don't know if DC's actually going to start their starters or not. Right?
Yep. This is definitely not a betting game.
Yeah.
No doubt. Now, Jake, I agree with what you're saying to a point, and it was because I watched the game last week and saw how a team came back and almost beat DC. So if it wasn't for the few unexpected loss, or the two that, or the one and then the one game that DC had against opponents, I would be screaming the same message you're screaming right now. All right, let's move on to the Houston Roughnecks versus the Arlington Renegades. That game is in Arlington. It's Sunday, April 23rd at 3 p.m. Eastern, and it is on ESPN. Now, the question hangs in the air. Will the Roughnecks sit their starters? And will the Renegades come out ready to play? Lots of questions here. What do you think, Drew?
I don't think the Roughnecks have the luxury of sitting their starters. I think with Silvers having been injured for a while and not playing the best, and the offense having hiccups, yeah, they've found ways to win games, but sometimes that doesn't get you very far when it comes to playoff games or the championship, especially at the higher levels of football. So this is an opportunity to figure something out, right? Arlington's going to be playing on fire, so you're going to have the level of competition there to figure something out. You're going to have to step up to win this game because they're gunning for you. Houston doesn't really care if they lose, but Houston does care if they figure out their offense. And honestly, I would say if Houston goes down a couple of scores in the first half, they probably pull their starters. So another situation where I don't think I would bet on this game just because of the dynamic that's going on there. But, I mean, Arlington showed they can hang with the best in the league last week. And they've kind of shown that all year. They've been in that middle tier, but they've been in very close games. They haven't really gotten blown out many times. They're a consistent football team, if nothing else. So, and then, with Luis Perez stepping in, he's kind of lifted their offensive production a little bit. So, we'll see if they can keep that going against Houston. We'll see how long Houston keeps their starters in. I don't expect the starters for Houston to finish the game regardless. But I don't know. We'll see. The biggest thing is the playoff implications for this game. And people are going to want to see a good game. I think it will be a good game for a little while. I don't know which way it's going to go. If it goes against Houston, they'll pull their starters. If it goes for Houston, then they'll probably ride it out and just get as much of their offense figured out as possible.
What you got, Jake? Anything to share on that?
I will keep it very, very brief. Houston, do me a favor, beat Arlington, and put them out of their misery. That's all I've got to say.
Yeah, I think this game's going to be close and going to give us a little preview into the playoff picture long term. Or not really long term since we're here now. But these teams are much more evenly matched than what it appears, in my opinion. I'm just going to be honest about that. Houston, week 1 through 3, amazing. Houston now, we're not the same. As you said, if we can figure this offense out and figure out our pieces and our correct moves down the field, then we'll be fine. But that's going to take actually playing the game of football. So I don't see us sitting starters either. I would be disappointed if we did and had a lackluster game, just in general. It'd make me disappointed as a fan.
Well, I mean, if from a coaching standpoint, if you're potentially playing the same exact team next week and it's a playoff game, you want to force them to show as much as you possibly can. You want your defense to go out there and make life absolutely impossible for them so that they have to come up with new stuff that maybe they haven't done all year. Because then it puts the pressure on them to perform and not the pressure on you because you've seen most everything. So, I think there's a lot of reasons for Houston to play their starters and play a damn good game. You want to see as much out of that offense with Luis Perez as you can.
Should be a good one. Look forward to it. All right, let's move forward and talk about the Vegas Vipers taking on the Seattle Sea Dragons. That game is in Seattle. It is Sunday, April 23rd at 9 p.m. Eastern. So we're looking at a little bit of a later start time than what we've been doing the past couple of weeks. That game is on ESPN 2. And like I said, it also takes place on ESPN Plus. I don't even know where to start on this one, guys. What do you think?
It's hard to say. I mean, Seattle's just been on the rise, man, ever since week what was it, 4 when they beat Houston. I mean, they've just been getting better and better and better. It's scary that DiNucci didn't throw a consequential interception last game, because if he starts doing things like that frequently and not throwing consequential interceptions, then Seattle's really hard to beat even for DC. So, I mean, I think Seattle where did you say this is? This is Lumen Field, right, in Seattle?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see this one being very close, especially with Vegas having stuff to figure out on the offensive line after they lost Demby against Houston. I think Seattle's about to tear Vegas up big time.
Yep, I agree with you. I think Vegas has something to prove, but otherwise there's not much there.
What about you, Jake? What you got on this one, man?
I hate to say it, but this is a matchup I'd rather just plead the fifth on and not even comment on it.
Fair enough.
I mean, with Vegas, are we looking at anybody? We know McClendon's going to be playing well. I mean, are we looking at anybody that's notable?
I mean, Badette playing. The potential for Rod Smith to be out is kind of a big deal. He got hurt again against Houston. He came into the game questionable, though. I mean, Vegas really, they're in good position as far as injuries go. They've got players. The problem is that offensive line. If they could protect McClendon, then I would be a lot more bullish on Vegas making it close. But I don't think Vegas can make it close without being able to protect McClendon. And I mean, you saw what Houston's defense did to them last week. Seattle they may not have as good of a defense as Houston has, but they still make plays, and they're still going to be able to stop Vegas. So they're disciplined. They don't get a whole lot in terms of scoring defense, but overall, I think they're more than capable of stopping Vegas. And honestly, I think Las Vegas, the bettors or the casinos are thinking that Seattle has that in their favor as well. They're looking at 8.5-point favorites for Seattle.
Yeah, the Vegas Vipers can really be the Battlehawks' best friend this week, apparently. If they can beat the Sea Dragons, that helps the Battlehawks if they win. So
yeah, and the potential is there. If they get somebody that they can trust on that offensive line worked in from their reserves, then there's every chance that Vegas could pull off a sneaky one, right? But I just think it's going to take a lot more, because if they had that, they probably would have done it during the game against Houston.
Yeah, agreed.
Now the over under for this game, so it's an 8.5-point favorite for Seattle, but the over under is set at 47, so they're expecting a lot of points to be scored.
Yeah, I mean, with DiNucci at the helm, I'm expecting them to have quite a bit, just as it is. So I would take the over on this.
Yeah, I'm not sure I would touch over under on it. If I was betting, I probably would bet on Seattle to cover. If Seattle covers, then I would say the under probably hit. But I wouldn't take that as a parlay or anything. I think, 8.5 even. I don't know. I'm pretty bullish on Seattle in this game. I think they'll cover. So I probably would think that the under would hit.
Yeah, we've been pretty bullish on Seattle for a while now. So in terms of team-wise, we've been talking for a few weeks, and it's been my favorite for the championship win, just by far. Not my favorite team, though, so don't get jealous, Houston. It ain't like that. Jake, you got anything else to share before we move on to the power rankings?
Nope, I think you're good.
All right, so those are the game previews for this week, the final week of the XFL, final week of the regular season of the XFL. It's been a ride, fellas.
It has been a ride.
All right, Drew, if you could inform us of the power rankings, that would be awesome. These are Drew's power rankings for the XFL Insider podcast, and they are informative and helpful in my decision-making for who is the best in the XFL.
Yep, so DC still sits on top. They being able to hold off Arlington team that really was sneaky and came around late just kind of reiterates to me that, they can still perform against a really good defense. Arlington's one of the better defenses that there is. So they can still perform. DC still sits on top. They've got the best record. So, there's no real knock in that decision. Seattle jumps over St. Louis with that win over St. Louis. St. Louis drops below Seattle. So it goes DC, Seattle, then St. Louis for 1, 2, 3. And then Houston wraps up the top 4. Right after Houston, you have Arlington coming in. So they definitely put up a good fight against DC. Ended up losing, didn't improve their record. So they kind of stayed just where they are, even though it was really impressive. San Antonio comes in after Arlington. So San Antonio finally put a little bit of offense together, played some good defense. They didn't really have too much scoring offense. Was it two touchdowns, and then there was a defensive touchdown by Beasley. So, but San Antonio put together a complete game, ended up beating Orlando. So they're at 6. Las Vegas is at 7. They played really good against Houston for the first half, and then just absolutely got slaughtered after they lost Demby. So that puts them at 7, and then Orlando is still at number 8. So just to recap, it goes 1 DC, 2 Seattle, 3 St. Louis, 4 Houston, 5 Arlington, 6 San Antonio, 7 Las Vegas, and 8 Orlando.
Nice presentation there. I'll tell you, from gauging the rankings I've looked on online, yours is very similar to a lot of other sports analysts this week.
similar but better. Just kidding. I don't know.
Always better, baby.
I don't ever look at anybody else's stuff. I just try and pay attention to my stuff and do some situational analysis there.
Yeah, you can't because you don't want to be mimicking their show style and what they're doing. So I definitely look at their information and what they presented, but stuff like actual shows, I try to skip around. Okay, so next up, let's talk about the ambushsports.net Players of the Week. This week we have Ben DiNucci, of course, QB for the Seattle Sea Dragons, and Drew Beasley, D-end for the San Antonio Brahmas. Both these guys had a hell of a week. Ben DiNucci had 298 yards with 3 touchdowns and 1 interception. That man is looking good and is one of my favorites, and I'm sure Jake has a lot of good things to say about him this week. Jake, what do you got?
Nope. I'm staying silent on this one.
Hey, Jake, it's all right. I already called DiNucci a turd and a douchebag on this podcast, so you're wide open if you want to take some shots.
Yeah, you missed that. Yeah, the bash hour was there for you.
Well, I mean, as you guys both know, I kind of flew off the handle on the in our staff chat, so I'm just trying to ease my words in carefully because I don't want to get any more. I want to say the 4-letter S word, but yeah, let's just say I don't want to get any more trouble than I currently am with you guys and with the rest of the staff. Now I am trying to recall, didn't DiNucci do something classless like punch someone in the face or some junk like that?
He may as well have punched somebody in the face. He ran over one of the defenders, knocked him out cold, and then stood over and flexed on him. And not only did that, for about 2 or 3 minutes afterwards, was flexing and showing off to the fans and just generally being a classless ass.
Oh, God forgive me for this, but Jesus Christ, he's a bigger douchebag than anybody that fakes their injuries in soccer. The people that fly up in the air and pretend their knee is hurting and crap like that. I mean, seriously, that's freaking classless. But that's all I'm going to say about the pooch nooch.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I'm sure he does some things that are worth, applauding. He may do some community stuff, but on the field, that's about as douchebaggy as it gets.
Oh, I hate to be like the advocate for him, but I'm going to do it. I'm sorry.
This is when Brock Lesnar usually takes 6 to 9 months off and leaves everybody else hanging, which is a life that you rescued me from, my tribal chief, which is why I love you, my tribal chief.
Mr. DiNucci has 333 passing attempts for 2,332 yards in total. He's got 17 touchdowns on the season and 11 interceptions for the season. So that interceptions has been up this whole season. He usually averages 2 to 3 a game.
Talking about consequential interceptions or touchdowns?
Yeah, interceptions.
Oh, 1 to 2. I don't think has he even had a 3 interception game?
I'm not sure. I know a couple have been called back sometimes as well. So it kind of all blends. But anywho, I just want to note that, he is skilled, and I understand his personal behavior isn't highly favorable for an athlete, especially a good athlete. But you can't hate on the stats. You can't hate on the man. So
he had a fantastic game. It's just an asshole.
Keep it up, DiNucci. Drop the attitude, though. We like watching you.
For sure. No, we said earlier in the podcast it was pretty much an XFL masterclass. It's about as good as you're going to see somebody play in the XFL at the quarterback position outside of Dormady's freak 5 touchdown game. I think DiNucci really, honestly, is tops as far as quarterbacks in the league. Not named a healthy McCarron, at least. If he can drop interceptions, if he can rein in his shenanigans, I would like him a lot better.
No doubt. I'm in agreement. So, you want to talk about Drew Beasley next? What do y'all think about that?
How lucky do you have to be to just throw your hand in the air at a ball and it drop right into your bread basket? Now, luck really has nothing to do with why he is the defensive player of the week. The guy was all over the field. Tackles for loss, sack. I mean, the interception return for a touchdown. The guy did everything. He was the motor for the defense. He led by example. You didn't see him out there talking a lot. He just did what he did. And when you put in a defensive performance like that, it really does help. Like you guys saw in the Houston game, defensive performances help offenses. So, it really set the standard for the game. It said, no, we're not going to shut up. We're not going to back down. We're going to fight, and we're going to take what's ours. And they took it. And that's a large portion of that is because of what Beasley did.
4 tackles, 1.5 sacks, 1 tackle for a loss, 1 interception, and of course the 1 touchdown from the interception. Hell of a week his way. 33 was everywhere, and he made for the game to be exciting. So Absolutely. He did a really good job. Like I keep saying, every team has some defensive studs that just keeps this going. It keeps the sheer athleticism and competitiveness rolling. So we love to see it. And the best thing is they're not a good team, and he's playing like he's the best guy in the league. So keep it up, bro. Do work.
He puts on a hell of a show every week. It's not just this week either. Like he's one of the guys that consistently week in and week out is a performer. He's been a multiple time nominee for Defensive Player of the Week this season. Excellent player. Really, both of those guys, DiNucci and Beasley, excellent players. Well deserved.
You got anything you want to share on Drew before we move on and close out for the evening?
No, I think really that's it. I think we should close out with wishing our own thoughts and prayers to the family and friends of Chris Smith and the Seattle football family. Definitely a tragic thing that happened, regardless of where you stand in terms of on-field, off-field stuff. It's tough to deal with. So seeing something like that's always sad. So thoughts and prayers to everyone associated with Chris Smith that he had affected in his life.
Rest in peace, Chris. God willing, we hope your family and friends find peace in this tough time. And believe me when I say the XFL community really feels the death more than it's expected. This would be the second one so far this season. The first being the trainer with the Battlehawks. He passed as well, and it was a sad deal. So God bless you all, and rest in peace, Chris. Let's give it a second just to silence for him, please. Okay, as we close it out, Drew, Jake, please shout your socials, where the people can find you, all the good stuff, yada yada.
All right, so for me, Drew Wells is the name, and on Twitter I am at Ambush Sports HOU for Houston, at Ambush Sports HOU.
Jake Leonard on Facebook. You can find me on Twitter at Jake Leonard JRN. I'm also the editor-in-chief of Heartland Newsfeed. You can find that at heartlandnewsfeed.com.
And I am Matthew Tyler, the XFL Insider podcast host. These are my co-hosts, Drew and Jake. Appreciate both of you guys greatly for the time you spend. You can find the XFL Insider podcast on Twitter and Facebook. Just search that term and it'll pop up, I promise. Super active usually. As well as you can find our podcast on any streaming network and YouTube. Check us out. Send us a message, like, follow, comment, share, whatever. We appreciate everybody for listening. We thank the XFL for a great season. I want to thank Ambush Sports for getting me on and getting Drew and Jake involved as well. All of us were represented by Ambush, and we appreciate us being able to get as close as we can from that relationship. I also want to thank XFL board for posting our stuff on their site and showing us off. So thank you both. Thank you guys for coming on. Look forward to next week. We're supposed to have a guest on. He will be talking more about betting, and I'm not going to say his name yet until I know for sure and have it finalized. But it should be a big one. It should be a good one. So appreciate everybody. Have a good night, and we will see you next week.